So we have a big, wonderful gift for you today. And I'm going to let Amanda introduce.
I would like to introduce my papa to you all. He was born in Bethlehem, and he's a Christian Palestinian, and he would like to share his life story with you. So please welcome him.
Don't forget this lady sitting there.
And this is my Nana.
Hi. Thanks a lot for having me here with you today. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. We're going to do things a little bit different. I'm going to read when Amanda taught, when things kind of got together, I was in China. And I have been traveling for the last 5 weeks. I was in Panama for a while, then China, spent 3 weeks in China. And things are crazy, actually. I was supposed to come here on Monday. I got appointments, everything's gone crazy. But anyway, I sat and wrote something out. And it's just my feeling immediately from what I have seen, from what I have experienced. I'm going to read that to you. And then after that, I'm going to show you a little movie, just a light movie, and then we'll take questions, and we can get involved into other things. So bear with me while I'm reading. I was born in Jerusalem. But sorry, I'm a Christian Arab. Persons that live in countries where official language is Arabic are called Arabs, and they can be of any religious belief: Christians, Jews, Muslims, or any other group. I know we generally associate Arabs with Muslims, and they are the majority in the Arabic world, which consists of Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, Somalia, Jordan, Algeria, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates. Arabs are Semites. Just like the Jewish population, they are descendants of Abraham. As you know, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are the three Abrahamic religions. These three faiths, include my English, okay, are called, I just realized something. Mrs. Knoll told me that this is also an English class. So as I told them before, I think in Arabic and write in English. So sometimes our words are backwards because we write from right to left and English is from left to right, right?
Right.
So don't pick on me on that, okay? These three faiths are called monotheistic because they all have the same belief that there is one God and that we are all called to love one another, to seek peace and justice for all. Back to my heritage. My family comes from Nazareth. And this brings me to another point. My family does come from Nazareth. I was born in Jerusalem. I went to school in Bethlehem. Does that ring any bells to you guys? I mean, does that, that's pretty good, huh?
Tell them the next part. Who you played soccer with.
Yeah, we play soccer with Jesus in our backyard in Nazareth. That's right. Back to my heritage. My family comes from Nazareth. We trace our family to many generations in Nazareth. Our religious affiliation was Eastern Orthodox. That was a predominant religion in the Middle East at that time. But we eventually became Lutherans. My father studied mechanical engineering in Germany, and my mother taught German. And she was born in Jerusalem as well. All Palestinians speak a minimum of 2 languages, but most schools require 3 languages to graduate: English, Arabic, and German, or French. You cannot graduate from high school without knowing 3 languages very fluently. At age 9, I experienced a change in my life that has affected my adult life and goals forever, and made me look at life in a very special way, appreciating every minute of every day, and thanking God for His protection and guidance. It was probably 1 or 2 in the morning. I was sleeping in the bedroom I shared with my 2 older brothers, when I was suddenly awakened by shattered glass and explosion. Somebody threw a bomb into our bedroom. This was late 1947, and I was 9.5 years old. And you know something? Since I think I was 7 years old, I remember everything that happened to me. I can look at our house at that time and remember it, remember faces of my father who has passed away, everything. I remember every detail. Since then, I thank God for saving my family and for everything He has given us and made us and allowed us to accomplish. In 1947 was the start of the demise of Palestine as a country and the Palestinians as people. To me, even at 9.5 years, Palestine was heaven on earth. Our neighbors at that time, both Muslims and Jews, lived in harmony. We exchanged social functions, we interacted, and we played together as kids. So I asked myself, what happened? Why are we terrorized? Who would do such a thing to us? Well, let me go back. We go back to the late 1800s. When Dr. Herzl, I think you read something about him, started the Zionist movement. His goal was to establish a Jewish homeland, not being specific at that time of the location. Some suggestions were made to have it in Africa, some were to have it in the United States. The evolving Zionist movement eyed Palestine, and their strong lobbying the British government, which at that time was a superpower. Herzl and his group solicited Lord Balfour to help in establishing a Jewish home in Palestine. The Jewish homeland to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The declaration of the Balfour, they call it the Declaration of the Balfour Agreement, which also, and you know, if you ever read about that history, the Balfour Agreement, there's one paragraph they always eliminate and they don't include, and that paragraph said also to protect the current people that are living in Palestine, in other words, the Palestinians, whether they're Christians or Muslims. The atrocities of Hitler were a catalyst in trying to establish a Jewish state sooner than the expected timeline that they have. And the State of Israel was established in 1948. As a result, and it was accelerated as a result of the atrocities of Hitler in Germany, which you all know. Back to the shattered glass. If you remember, I had shattered glass in my bedroom. This was done by Jewish Zionist terrorist groups known as Haganah, Stern, and Irgun gangs. Their main purpose was to drive Palestinians out of their home by these terror acts, and it worked. These terrorist acts worked. It worked in the fact that we had to leave our home. We get to this. But the reason they did that is because they wanted to establish a purely Jewish state. My father's life was threatened by hiring an assassin to kill him. But instead, the gun went off in the assassin's pocket and into his thigh. Guess what? My father took him to the hospital. God has protected my father. God has protected my father because He had a plan for him, and his life was not yet complete. Our family nightmare started with threats on my father's life and threats on my teenage brother's life. My father and brothers had to leave to safety in another part of Jerusalem, while my mother and I, at 9.5 or 10 years, stayed back to protect our home. We had a fully furnished home. We had everything in our home, everything we owned. This did not last long. Britain, which at that time had a mandate over Palestine, decided to leave the country because it was getting too hot, too complicated for them. So they told us, that they can no longer protect us, but said they would be glad, they would take us to safety if we wanted to, and they did. We had a British Army truck came and took me and my mother. What we did is we locked our door, left with the clothes we had on, got into the truck, and were transported to another part of Jerusalem, which was still in Palestinian hands. I enjoyed my father, because my brothers had to totally leave the country. We had to start our life over again. That's being refugees. We were fortunate because my dad was an engineer. He found work with the United Nations. But this did not last long. Since the Israelis occupied the area we moved into. And we had to become refugees again. We had to move to Lebanon. We just had to leave the country. We stayed in Lebanon for 3 years. Palestinians are very much attached to their land. And my father was not different. He wanted to go back. But this time, we moved to Bethlehem, since it was not occupied by Israel. I finished high school in Bethlehem, and my family decided to move back to Jerusalem, the Arab-controlled part of Jerusalem, our birthplace. At the same time, I also left Palestine to study in the United States. I came to the University of LSU and studied engineering as well, because there was no higher education offered in Palestine because of the war. There aren't any schools. In 1967, my parents became prisoners in their home. Now, mind you, we own our home. I have titles for all our properties. I have titles from the Ottoman Empire, which you might have studied. So they were prisoners in their home in the fact that they could not leave their home without being checked, without going through a checkpoint. They could not freely leave our home. Even up to today, Christians in Bethlehem cannot go to Jerusalem to pray. Usually in Easter, everybody goes to Jerusalem. They cannot get a passage to go to Jerusalem to pray. Of maybe 100 might apply, only 2 or 3 allowed to go. So at this time, there is no freedom for Christians, and Muslims as well, freedom of religion. There is a big wall being built around Jerusalem, and if you are on the wrong side of the wall, there is no way you can get into Jerusalem. If you are anything other than an Israeli. Israel occupied the rest of Jerusalem. My father died in 1969, and my mother later came to stay with us, leaving our home and friends. I think the only reason we survived all these incidents is due to my mother's deep belief in God. We always have questioned, why does God allow this to happen to his people? The direct descendants to his son. You know, you think about it. We're Christians. We live in the Holy Land. How did we become Christians? Because we accepted Jesus. And we are the original ones. We are the ones that are still living there that did accept Jesus. Yet we cannot live freely. Now, I know there's a plan, and God has guided me to that plan. I know there was a calling for me. Excuse me, I get very... My calling for me is to help my brother Christians in Palestine, since I'm here. And, thinking myself, I get along with the youth very well, with teenagers and any kind of age, any age, I get along very well, and I'm very active actually in our church as well, in our synod throughout Southeast Michigan. But there was a calling from me. That calling came actually as in an accident. I was in Jerusalem in one of my trips, and I saw tourists, like sheep going behind the flag, just like that. And I happened to talk to one, and he asked me where I am, and said, I'm an Arab, I'm a Christian. they could not comprehend the fact that there is an Arab that can be a Christian. They could not comprehend that. That in 2005, 2004 was my trip. 2005 was the first time I took youth back to Palestine. I couldn't believe that, people could be so narrow-minded and so ignorant as to where Christianity even started. For heaven's sake, you're in Jerusalem. That's where Christianity started. What do you think the people here, where are they from? Anyway, so that my calling was to take young people to Palestine and Israel to show them what the people are like in that part of the world. We meet with Jewish, Muslim, and Christian youth. Last trip I was there last year actually with about 12 kids. We went to synagogues. We had the Passover. I went to a Jewish family in Jerusalem. I had dinner with them. The kids went to the synagogue, then we went to a mosque, then we went to a church. So it's, we try to keep all our communications open. There are many, many Israelis in Israel that really do not feel the same way we feel. What we are after, what Palestinians in Palestine right now are after, they want to live free, they want to live in peace, they want to be able to communicate, they want to be able to, if they want to build a house on their land, to be able to do so. They cannot do so right now, but there are a lot of Israelis that agree with that. Actually, when I go in June, I will go on a tour by an Israeli group that will show us the areas that homes were demolished and what's happening to the Palestinian population. So, in short, I'm going to show you a system. Our Christian brothers and sisters in the Western world have totally forgotten their Christian brothers in the Holy Land. You never hear about Christianity in the Holy Land. You never do. All you do is you hear about the Church of Nativity, where Christ was born, where Christ was buried, and all those kind of things. But there are people there. If you ever go there, you have to meet some of those Christians over there. So I would just like to cut it here. I would like to take questions, but I also would like to show you a little movie. The movie is about a school in Bethlehem, and it's a Christian school, and just gives you an idea of what teenagers like yourselves look like and what they do. And then we'll go through some questions.
Okay. So you want
The city of Bethlehem, birthplace of Jesus Christ and home to more than 40,000 Palestinians, is now encircled by an 8-meter-high concrete wall. This apartheid wall, as many have come to call it, has turned Bethlehem into a walled ghetto, cutting through Palestinian land, destroying neighborhoods, and imprisoning its population. What is almost as shocking is how the majority of the world continues to sit quietly while such monumental offenses continue to take place. As events unfold in Palestine, the rest of the world watches and wonders, just who are these people forced to live behind this bleak and domineering structure? Among the many things that internationals do not realize about this place is that there still exists a small but thriving Christian community. In 1995, Mitri Raheb, pastor of Christmas Lutheran Church, had an ambitious plan for the revitalization of his native Bethlehem community. Mitri wanted to extend the reach of Christmas Lutheran Church beyond the walls of the church and its small congregation to benefit as much of Bethlehem's Christian and Muslim communities as possible. In this troubled city, just a stone's throw away from where the shepherds first heard the good news, Mitri's team has surprised everyone by succeeding in creating a vision of how Palestine could, should, and must look. The vision of DR is to make sure that the people of Palestine may have life and have it abundantly. Through programs that are contextual and holistic, the overall mission of DR is to help build a country stone by stone, to empower a community person by person, and to create institutions that give life in abundance.
It's amazing, actually. Many people cannot even believe it, that this organization is only 15 years old. And it's interesting, I still remember how we started. Basically as a one-man show, where I was the man and I was the show. How we started with 8 chairs from the 50s, 1 desk from the 60s, an old typewriter, and $327, 15 years ago. And to see where we are now, the third largest private employer in the Bethlehem region with over 100 people working, but also over 2,500 members. These are young people, these are young adults, these are elderly, who see themselves part and parcel of this ministry. They are members. And I believe that we are still at the beginning. We are warming up.
This ministry, collectively known as DR, meaning homes in Arabic, is ecumenical, serving the whole Palestinian community from womb to tomb. A major focus of DR is on culture, aiming to revitalize the cultural identity of the Palestinian community by encouraging artistic talent, facilitating intercultural encounters, and offering an infrastructure for conferences and festivals.
I find that DR is very unique, not only even on a local level, but actually I find it even on a universal level in its message, in its vision, in its work. The thing is, it promotes and it talks about a culture of life.
Strengthening the civil society in Palestine is at the heart of DR's mission. The Civic Engagement Program provides training for Palestinian youth, women, teachers, and future leaders. They are motivated to actively participate in creating their future and in becoming agents of change.
To give them a feel of the vision so that they can be part of. To open their eyes to see that the sky is the limit. To help them transform from being spectators into becoming actors. So this transformation actually is what this ministry is all about.
If you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them right now. If not, I can speak and I'll keep speaking. So how much time do we have?
We have about 10 minutes.
Okay, but let me just make a few footnotes to what I told you. That you might believe or you might not, but everything I'm telling you is personal experience. Our family still owns a lot of property in what is now called Israel. We don't have any rights to it. I cannot get compensation for it. I can't build on a piece of land. I have a beautiful piece of land between Bethlehem and Jerusalem that overlooks the city of Jerusalem. I cannot touch it. As an example, if you are not an Israeli citizen, not of the Jewish faith, like in East Jerusalem, there's some Arab Palestinians that live in the Israeli section. You cannot alter your house. You cannot put a window in your house. And tell you what happens, and it's a fact, and I've experienced it the last trip we were there. If a family decides that they want to put better windows on their house, if they don't get a permit, you know what happens to the house? It gets demolished to the ground. So what they need to do is they need to get a permit. Permit takes 2 years, roughly, to put new windows. And it costs about $10,000. There aren't that many people in that part of the world that can afford $10,000 and wait 2 years. So they don't improve, they can't improve that. Only Palestinians have to go through that. I personally cannot build on the land I own there. I cannot be a citizen in Israel because I'm not of the Judaic faith. I cannot be a citizen. I can't get a Jewish. Now, if you are of the Jewish faith, and I don't care, you live in New York, you're in Grand Rapids, you can go there, you automatically get citizenship. You automatically have your two citizenship, US that you have as well, automatically, no questions asked, no questions asked. This is one. Home demolitions. There is a website called OCHA, it's OCHA, and it's run by the United Nations. And I get it on a weekly basis. It shows how many homes were demolished because people did some modification on the home because they can't get permits. So what they do, our custom is the parents live in the first floor. When the kids get old and they get married, they add another floor. So they live there, and then so forth, just keep adding floors as their kids get married. So if they were to do that, they're in violation, their houses are totally demolished. One other thing that happens, and there's in Jerusalem, and you cannot, if you are a Palestinian and you're not Israeli of the Judaic faith, you cannot leave your home. Somebody has to be in your home all the time, all the time. You know why? Because if you do leave your home, somebody will come and occupy it, and you can't get back into it. There's quite a few instances that has happened, and I have seen it. I have seen the people out of their homes setting tents in the backyard, in the homes that they own. As I have said before, Christians in Bethlehem cannot go to Jerusalem unless they get a special permit. The wall has divided. In my church in Jerusalem, the Lutheran church in Jerusalem, our organist cannot live with his family. The organist was in Jerusalem, he has a Jerusalem ID. His wife lives in a small town 15 minutes away, but she's outside the Jerusalem zone. They can't live together. She can't go to see him. So whenever she goes, if she does go, and if they catch her, she goes to prison. He is afraid to go out of Jerusalem because what they do, see that checkpoint? They look at your ID, that checkpoint. Now, they might take your ID. If you are a Jerusalemite and you have that ID and you are a Palestinian, they might take that ID, and when they take that ID, you can't go back into Jerusalem again. So the people in Jerusalem are afraid to leave, and the people out of Jerusalem are not allowed to get in. So if for any reason you have a family, and that's what split a lot of families, a lot of Palestinian families. As I said, in our church, that's what happened to the organist. If you go to church on Sunday, and when we're there, I tried to go to church on Sunday, there's only 7 or 8 people. Where's everybody? Well, they're on the other side of the wall. They're not allowed to come in. A lot of farmers, the wall goes right through their land. The fertile land, all their plants is on the other side. They cannot go and cultivate their land. You cannot believe, and as he has said in this video page, Western Christians really do not know, and they don't care as to what happens to Christians, the real Christians in Palestine. And it's to me it's mind-boggling. I've lived here for 47 years, 50 years, something like that. Anyway, and I still cannot understand. And I take young people there. And fortunately, a lot of the young people I take with me come back, and their parents call me right away after we come back. They said, my daughter or my son's life has changed. It's totally changed. Now, It's not important whether they have a fancy car. It's not important if they do this. It's not important. It's just their values change. And I have now 2 young ladies that were with me that are back in that part of the world volunteering. I've had many of them do that. So it's, I don't know how to express it to you. You know, you guys, this is why I like to be with young people because they're great. You know, I mean, you know, there's nothing like young, this is the future. You know, I'm on a council now in my church, and I keep telling them, if you don't get the young people to our church, you will die. They are our future, and I just believe in you guys, all of you, really. I really believe in you so much, and this is why I take young people on trips to Palestine and to Israel and have them exchange ideas with others as well. But that's all I have to say today. I have a lot to say, but I really don't want to bore you. And usually I don't hear things like that. I just go into a lot of political things, and I'm not going to do that to you. But if you have any questions, I'll be very glad to answer them.
Anybody have any questions?
Go ahead.
So what do you personally do then? Like, what's your job for this?
Now, myself. I retired, and now I'm a consultant engineer. I travel all over the world doing consulting work. And I do the youth program. I do that once a year, and I take about 15 young people with me to Palestine. This next trip is going to be in June, and I'm taking all my family, well, most of my family with me with us. It's 15 of us are going.
And am I right that, from what you said, third hour, that you have conversations then with people of other faiths, with the young people that you bring, right?
No question about it. You know, in those little sessions you see it down there where we sit at a round table, and you know, we have all kinds. You know, the problem I have, most of the problems that we have when we're there, when we invite kids in Israel are not allowed to go to the Palestinian territories. They are not allowed. They can't cross. So when we have an open session like that, and we invite them, they won't come. The Israeli government won't let them come. And then kids in the Palestinian section cannot go to Israel because they just won't let them. So, you know, how can you have peace if you don't talk to each other? It doesn't make sense. Something like that. Go ahead.
Is there like a specific organization?
Pardon?
Is there a specific organization that like is trying to help with this, or?
For people like myself, and there is in the Lutheran, the Presbyterians, the Episcopalians have also activity, but the Lutherans are very active in that area. There is a lot of organizations. There's some YMCA, YWCA has an effort. There is a lot of organization. BSB, which is Brighton, Bethlehem's, the video that you saw, they also have, there are youth exchanges all the time in that part of the world, really. So yeah, there is, and if you're interested, just let us know and we're glad to help you out, yes.
Is there any like specific like ruler or one person, or is it a whole government that's making all of these rules that people can't?
It is the government. It really is. It's like us here. It's the same way in the United States. There's a lot of things that you'd like, but you don't like to see. But the government says, For me, Israel has the right to be what it is. It really does. I agree that. But the Israelis, I work with a lot of Israelis. When I go there, some of the tours we take are with Israelis. They also see that, but they can't do anything about it. I mean, the government is just totally obnoxious.
But again, it's the Zionist movement that let me just throw this in, the Zionist movement that started all this. And so it's that political faction that brainwashed a certain number of people. You got to get some people on your side, and then it grew and grew and grew. Because it's amazing how many, and I say the average Jew on the street, excuse the expression, but average Joe on the street, they don't like this either. They don't like that their government is demolishing homes. So there's this group that takes people around on this tour to show demolished homes. The Jewish Voice for Peace is another organization that's extremely active. They're not they're just for peace. Let's stop all this garbage and get along. There's something called Breaking the Silence. And all the Israeli young people have to serve in the army, girls and guys. If a girl refuses, I don't know, she has some little punishment, but if a guy refuses, he might be thrown in jail. I mean, they have to serve, and they've got to carry this big machine gun on their back all over the city, all over every place. When these soldiers are finished with their tour, which I think is 2 years, isn't it? Somebody, along the way thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? When they're out of that position, they realized what they've done to so many people. So they've started this group called Breaking the Silence, and we heard some of these ex-soldiers come and talk to us. That was very moving. These are Israeli men who have served in the army and have been, hitting kids over the head with a mallet and who knows what, to keep them from getting to school. I mean, terrible things. And they say that what happens is when we finish this tour of duty, 2 things happen. Either they can join us into this group called Breaking the Silence, so we can go around and speak to people and say, this is wrong what we've done. Or the other option is they go off to, Saudi Arabia and someplace, India or someplace, and we just drug ourselves to death because we are so distraught with what we've done. So there's a whole lot, it's very surprising to me, but a lot of Jewish people who think this is terrible too.
And that is the bell.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
And you're the ones who are going to change the future, hopefully, in
I
that
hope
regard.
so.
But you need to
I'm
be
counting.
informed. So I'm thankful that you inform us.
But also our website here and